Here it is, the K24 swapped RX8. Gonna do a one take and kind of ramble on about all the parts and what it took to get me to this point. So it took about 2 weeks of grinding away every day for 12 to 14 hours just to get the car running, and another week to kind of finalize all the electrical stuff so it was drivable. So yeah, I'm gonna run through the setup. I did this kind of on a budget. So it's a junkyard K24A2 out of a 2005 Acura RSX. eBay GT35 Turbo. And then I built this log manifold out of Schedule 10 stainless. And 3-inch downpipe. So here's the clearances. What you got to do is cut. There's a pinch weld here, so you can see where I cut it back there. So cut it all along back there and then re-welded it just to gain that extra bit of clearance here. And then I squished the downpipe into like an oval, just so it doesn't rock over and hit the body when the engine kind of twists under load. There's not a lot of room to work with back here, obviously. So the engine is stuffed way into the firewall. But I cut slits into this panel and then put some riv nuts back there. So it's bolted on with 2 bolts that I can remove. And I can also remove the cowl, and everything is serviceable back there. There's still not a lot of room, but enough room to work on the cam angle sensors. If you're running a K24, there is a coolant port back there that you have to block off. You can't run a coolant outlet pipe or whatever back there, just because you need as much room as you can back there. I already cut so far back that the plate I used to fill the hole is touching the heater core. So you do need a block off plate. And then you will, you can't really see it. You will need to run your upper rad hose straight to the side of the head, not the back of the head, to the side. So with that being said, if you have that set up, you're clear. You can run a K24. You don't need a K20 head. I am running a PMC Motorsports adapter from Poland, not the Collins kit, although it is very similar. Therefore, I had to notch the subframe to fit the oil pan, which will be later in the end of the video. I think I have a video of the car up on a lift, and everything else is going to be a time lapse. I had to shift the ABS module over about 1 inch, and I made some brackets to make that work. And even then, there's not a lot of room back there. For the throttle body, I used an RX8 throttle body, and then I just drilled new holes and bolted it straight up to this intake manifold that is reversible. Not a real Skunk 2, unfortunately. I am using 1050cc injectors. I did do a return fuel system, so the fuel pressure regulator returns back to the tank through the original fuel feed line, and then I ran a new AN6 feed line directly from the pump under the vehicle. And what's good is that that AN line fits on the factory bracket next to all the brake lines. So here it is back there. I drilled a new hole for the feed, and then this is the return going back to the factory feed line. And then I just bored out the pump to fit the bigger fuel pump. So it's pretty simple. You will need a fuel siphon from Radium, and it'll basically be able to pull fuel from the other side of the tank into this side just through Venturi, I guess. That way you don't run out of gas at half tank. MPC Motorsports pulley, so we can run a 3-pulley setup with the electric power steering rack. It is a little sketchy because to get the proper belt tension, you will need to use some washers to space out the alternator to tension the belt. So this sits really close. I am worried that it is going to rub under heavy load, or if the alternator's got some resistance, if I'm running a lot of electrical stuff. Sway bar sits real close to that pulley, but it fits without modifying anything on the sway bar mounts. S2000 radiator. Cut a big hole here. You can still access the coolant fill, although I might weld a piece and relocate that up here. S2000 rad hose had to be spliced in a couple spots, but the upper and lower hoses fit. Got a pivotal coolant or a thermostat housing adapter there just to make everything work. I made this plate here just to mount everything clean. It's a boost controller mounted there, E85 sensor mounted there, and obviously the fuel pressure regulator. I built the wiring harness myself, and it kind of just follows the OEM Honda wiring, and then I have additional sensors like fuel pressure and oil pressure sensors, NOx sensors, all that good stuff. The factory RX8 rad fan fits the Honda S2000 rad with a little bit of modification. Easy little bracket there just to extend things. I mounted my oil catch can down there. Built these AN lines, and it was my first time welding aluminum. I'm pretty proud of those, so that's pretty cool to see. These ones are a little boogered, but it should hold. Built this panel here just to hide the factory power steering modules underneath there. I do have to fix this. I'm gonna get a new fitting. What else? So yeah, the harness kind of runs here, and then punched a big hole into the firewall and used this grommet, and that goes into the part of the mess. ECU Masters Black, and that's gonna communicate with the factory dash, which is sick. So yeah, that's pretty much the setup. Factory RX8 motor mounts, and I just built the engine mount brackets myself. That's what they look like. They fit in there pretty nicely. I did have to drop the steering rack, so I made these spacers to drop it down an inch, and then to compensate for that, I had to buy this bump steer kit. If you can see that blue outer tie rod, it's kind of hard to see, but that drops the tie rod angle from like this to this, so it doesn't pull you into all the bumps on the road and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I just got to send this out to the dyno and get it tuned, and we should be ripping. It fires up, and let's fire it up. Throw her in neutral. Whoop. Oh, the key's in there. Hear that big fuel pump? I don't know much about tuning, but I got it to be able to fire up and drive. So I'm pretty stoked on that. Full 3-inch exhaust. I don't want to smoke myself out here. Alternator charges. Yeah, pretty sweet setup. I'm so excited to rip this thing. So while I have the RX8 on the lift, I figured I'd run through all the clearance. The engine to subframe is real close, even after the notching. 3-inch downpipe with an external wastegate, real close. Well, actually there's still a lot of room, but it's pretty close right around here. But you can work with a 3-inch exhaust.